Obviously, this is a fixture that, no matter what club you're in charge of, has special resonance for you, given your roots, where you've come from. And last year it was a fixture that has very good memories, isn't it?
Yeah, up there, not here. I mean, we had I think it was our first win in the Premiership away from home, and always, of course, with Newcastle, it's always very sweet for myself personally. Of course it is, but they certainly got their revenge when they came here and turned the tables handsomely. So it's always one that to look forward to. It's a big full house, big arena, great place to play, and let's look forward to it, and let's hope we can get another result.
There's clearly some pressure growing up there at the moment. They haven't got a win this season, and there's a lot of talk about what may or may not happen in terms of fans' demonstrations against Alan Pardew tomorrow. What do you make of what he's had to endure recently?
Well, let me say I've witnessed, and I know what he's gone through after being in the North East, and it's not easy. It's not an easy place to manage, and us managers, especially at the Premier League, at the forefront, if you like, we always know that round the corner it can happen, and you genuinely feel for the manager in charge. And at this particular moment, under the hammer, so far it's only 4 games, you know. But this is what, unfortunately, football, especially in the North East now, this. You know, it seems to be worse in that region. I can say that because I'm up there. You know, it's a difficult place to manage, and we've got to try and take advantage of that. Of course, we have. We've got to be mercenary enough to try and do that. But the other stuff, it's not enjoyable to watch and stand from afar, because at the end of the day, you know, over the years he's done a decent job as Alan, under difficult circumstances, but I think that's the nature of the beast, especially in the North East.
I know managers generally say that pressure comes with the job, but in your own mind, are you able to rationalise it? After all, this was a manager that made Newcastle finish in the top 10 last year.
They finished in the top 10, and was it the year before he was manager of the year? I mean, it's the way, unfortunately. I think we all understand that it's a result-based business now. We understand that, but some of the nonsense that goes with it, I have to say now, is ridiculous, you know. But unfortunately, the way social media is the way today, and the way the media is today, there's a huge appetite for it, for all this, as we call, nonsense. And I think you're right there. It comes with the territory, but you have to say in the North East it seems to quadruple. When there's a crisis, there's a crisis, and I suppose that goes from the huge support that they've got.
I suppose from your perspective, though, first and foremost, your concern is Hull City. Correct. Therefore, does the pressure on Alan Pardew and...
Well, we've got to try. We've got to be mercenary enough to try and take advantage of the situation and start the game well. If we start the game well and, you know, and get our noses in front, then it can be, and we all know then, it can be a very, very difficult place to go and play the North East. There's a huge expectation, and so we've got to go there and first of all play, and play well. And our last away game, we were awful, and if we play like that, we'll get nothing, no matter what the situation is in the North East. So first and foremost, we have to play like we did the other night against West Ham. I was delighted with the performance. It was a great game of football, and let's hope we can do exactly the same thing tomorrow.
There's at least one report I've read this morning that says Hassan Ben Arthur's loan deal states that if Alan Pardew is no longer manager, he's got the right to terminate his contract.
No, let me put this clear. I mean, there's also loads of talk. Apparently what I'm hearing is that he's sitting on the bench next to me. He'll be sitting in the tickets that Newcastle allocate. He's coming with the squad because we're going to do a bit of training with him. At the moment, he's under a big fitness regime, which he's gladly took part in. You know, I've heard all this nonsense. It's a normal loan deal like everybody else has got. Nothing, no breaks, nothing at all. And as for where he's going to sit and where he's not going to sit, he's going to sit in the seat that Newcastle give him. So if they want to sit him on top of the stand, that's where they can do. That's where they can put him. But he'll be sitting with the rest of the players who be part of the squad.
That could be uncomfortable on top of the stand.
I think it could be.
There was one other plenty of press speculation last Sunday. Your name suddenly started being linked with Newcastle. Is that news to you?
Well, I find that, and I tried to say that on radio, on the radio last week, that I find that hugely disrespectful. Not only to the people who employ me here and the supporters of this club, but also to Alan himself. You know, I know how hard it is. I've witnessed and how difficult it is. We've all been there, and I was appalled when I read all that nonsense. But as I said, what can I do about it? I've done my best to try and calm the whole situation. It seems to be, because I'm a Geordie, that every time the job comes up since 2002, I've always been linked with it because I'm from Newcastle and it's the team I supported as a boy. That'll never change, you know. But as for all the other nonsense, then I find it hugely disrespectful.
Finally from me, obviously 2 of the deadline day signings made a big impact on Monday night. How pleased are you with how your transfer signings have settled in general?
Well, there's no doubt about it. The 4 of them on deadline day. Unfortunately, the deadline day came when internationals were all away, so we hadn't really seen them. As soon as they've come and trained with the players and the squad, they've lifted the whole situation and the whole intensity of training, because 4 new players have walked through the door, and good players at that. And I think that's the most important thing for me. They've all been really good players, and we're seeing 2 of them make instant impact. Let's hope when Ramirez and Ben Arfa get their chance, they can make the impact of what the other 2 have done, because they've had a wonderful start. Hernandez, I don't think, could walk for 2 days after what's happened. So I think that's vitally important, that we look after him and see how he is, because it's never easy. The Barclays Premier League had players with an intensity that he thought all he could say afterwards is crazy, you know, which is normal when they come and sample the Premier League for the first time.
You won't have to do with Hernandez what they're doing at Chelsea with Costa, will you? Just playing the 1 game a week, you'll be able to...
No, physically wise, he's fine. But we must remember that he had been in Japan and South Korea, and then hurled himself back from there to waiting in Rome. He was for 3 days, so it was a bit of a whirlwind. But he trained the day before the game, and trained with an enthusiasm and an adrenaline, probably, really. But I think if you witnessed the game the other night, you could see how physically tired he was. And we'll see how he is. We'll see how he is tomorrow. But thankfully, unlike Costa, who's got a bit of a hamstring, I believe, he's physically fine.
Okay. Now, you said to Richard earlier that obviously you were disappointed with your last away game, but of course your squad has completely changed since your last away game. So how much confidence does that give you that you've all these players?
Well, I was delighted the way we played the other night against a really good West Ham team. I thought the whole game was a really great advert for a real Premier League, Barclays Premier League game, and I was delighted. You know, I was delighted with the performance and how we did. We're a bit disappointed that we took the lead twice and didn't hang on. However, the way we've performed, I was, as I said, very pleased with the contribution by everybody.
Now, you've got a big squad now, by comparison with what you had last year at least, and I just wonder how you're going to...
The big difference, and I spoke to Big Sam after the game. Big Sam had 4 or 5 injuries the other night and still had a bench, which when you look at it and you look at the players, Carroll, Nolan, Jarvis, the winger, were all missing through injuries. And the same thing happened to me. This time last year we had 3 or 4 serious injuries. Aluko, Brady, Chester, McShane later on. We had 3 or 4 out for the best part of 6 months. Now statistics tell us that during any one season they think you're going to pick up 3 or 4 injuries usually. Hopefully they're not long term like Snodgrass. You're going to pick up 3 or 4 injuries. So we have to guard against that. There was times last year when we were thin on the ground. I looked behind me on the bench and the strength and depth wasn't there after picking up the 3 or 4 injuries. So we've done our best to make sure that the squad is bigger and healthier. Of course, I've got to keep them happy. You've just seen one today. We've just interviewed Liam, who's had a wonderful 2 years for me, and going to be disappointed that he didn't start last weekend. But that's the situation that I've got to create. I've got to try and keep them all happy. There's going to be times, as I've just said, where they're going to be knocking on the door and they desperately want to play, and I'll probably use the loan situation like we did with Friar last year to try and help that situation. But with the transfer window the way it is, in the past you could maybe have a squad of 16, 18 players if you like, and if you got 1 or 2 injuries you could go into the transfer market and go and loan somebody. That can't happen now. So we've all got to have these squads of 25. We look bigger on numbers. We're not really. We're probably one or two bigger and better than what we were, but there's no question that the squad in depth has got real depth to it now, which obviously helps the manager.
It sure does. If things work out on Saturday as they did last season, have you been working on your dance moves?
Oh dear, oh dear. There's some things which unfortunately we do in the heat of the game you feel totally embarrassed about, and that is one of them, which unfortunately gets regurgitated by people and annoying people like you. So I hope I'm dancing, but I've got to improve, that's for sure.
And he took some Schmeichel, he's done the dancing bit.
There's one thing I will never be doing any dancing, because it's certainly not my game.